have all heard the legend of the hangman that prowled the land that Eaton's orchard now sits on. However, the hangman is just that, a legend. The truth behind the legend started over a century ago with a lowly farmer that had a black heart and an evil soul. This portion of history began with the original owner of the land the orchard now sits on, Otis Eaton. He was a ruthless man with a taste for women and gambling. It was his taste for gambling which brings his wife into the picture. Otis had won Isabel Lacroix in a poker game against her father. After that game, Isabel was forced into wedlock with Otis. Isabel's family was of Cajun descent, and she had secretly practiced voodoo as a younger woman. On the day the two were wed, Isabel placed a curse on Otis, his land, and all who stepped foot on it. Otis forced Isabel into a life of labor and forced himself onto her whenever he deemed fit. The result of one of these ravishings was a baby boy. Twisted and deformed by the hate of his mother, Silas Eaton was thrown to the wild hogs of the area by his father. But instead of devouring the tiny infant, the hogs kept the child safe and raised him as one of their own. The damage caused by such abuse turned Silas into a completely deranged psychopath later in life. He grew into a crazed man, staying hidden from eyes of humans which he grew to hate. From this hate spawned a desire to kill, butcher, and devour the flesh of his victims. Thus the persona he took on, the Butcher. There was a second son born not long after Silas, Ezekiel Eaton. Zeak, as he was called, was not tossed to the wildlife of the area. However, his fate may have been just as bad. Zeak was mentally and physically abused as he was kept in isolation from the world with only a handful of old books on machinery and biology. Zeak would lose himself in these books, pouring through them time after time. You see, Zeak had exceptional intelligence and formed ideas and theories on how to combine man and machine. Deeply disturbed as a young man, he started kidnapping children and women to try out his experiments, which he would often perform in the junkyard near the orchard. One day, Otis found out of his actions and confronted him. Zeak brutally murdered his father that day and took his place at the head of the family. After the funeral of Otis, Isabel was being escorted home by her brother Vernon. Vernon ran a small sawmill that supplied lumber for the shipyard on the outskirts of the orchard. Forgetting the curse she had placed on the land, she took the trail through the orchard where something strange took place. Vernon was overcome by the evil of the land and forced himself onto his sister under the large craggly apple tree, now known as the Hanging Tree. That tree now seems to be the area of the orchard where the evil is most focused. From that incestual encounter, and despite the attempt to abort her pregnancy, Isabella would have a set of twins who were horribly disfigured and conjoined at birth. They were given the names Clovis and Clevis Eaton. The boys were kept in the cellar and chained away from the light of day. When not locked away, they were forced to be spectacles in the freak show of the local circus. The boys grew into a freakish monster that Zeak used in his experiments. Zeak later surgically separated the twins from one another. Now separated, the twins grew into their own identity. Clovis Eaton became a large man with an uncanny ability for hunting and tracking. So, if ever any of Zeek's experiments got free, Clovis would track them down before they could reach the safety of town. Clovis also had a love of firearms, his favorite being the shotgun. Clovis used his abilities to work and protect the family whiskey still that Zeak built as a source of income for the family, as well as to lure unsuspecting victims from all around. Where Clovis gained more of the twins' intelligence, Clevis gained more of the strength. Clevis grew into a hulk of a man with extreme strength. He was forced by Zeak to work at the factories on the edges of their land, cleaning up toxins and sludge, as well as to watch over the land to make sure that there were no unwanted guests. Clevis became intrigued by things he had seen in books on Houdini and worked until he could perform the same tricks and escapes as the great magician. Clovis and Clevis also shared the ability to communicate telepathically, which they used to torment their older brothers. The four brothers went on their spree of kidnapping, murder, and cannibalism for years until the townsfolk realized just what was going on in their pleasant little corner of the world. Local law enforcement would be of no use against the brothers, so they called the National Guard in to raid the orchard and to capture the brothers. After the brothers were caught, law enforcement could not believe the horror they found waiting for them in the orchard. Hundreds of bodies, tortured, slain, even eaten. The brothers were locked away in the South Henry Institution for the Criminally Insane, where they were all kept heavily sedated. So the guards thought. You see, the boys weren't exactly crazy. They were pure evil, and you can't cage evil. Inevitably, the boys did escape and murdered most of the guards and officials that ran the institution. They left the rest of the inmates. It is said to this day that the institute remains tainted by the evil of the Eaton boys. They were said to have taken refuge in the woods behind the old orchard near their home, where they would snatch up victim after victim. Over 50 years from that escape, no one has seen or found the bodies of the brothers. To this day, strange noises and screams can still be heard coming from the orchard on cool autumn nights. Some even say that the victims of the Eaton boys still roam the land of the old orchard. So if you find yourself lost on the trails of the orchard, keep your eyes on the shadows and pray you don't become the next victim of the brothers Eaton.